come to this session because you're looking more for tools or philosophy for grading? I'm curious. You can put it in the chat. Let's see. What do y'all think?
This is Whitney, and
Hey, Whitney.
Hi, Lynn. Hi, Jen.
Hi.
There we go.
Hey.
I think I'm looking to start with learning the different philosophies, and then from there, be like, okay, well, what tools do I use to make that philosophy come true?
Got it.
A dream
that
of
makes
philosophy come true.
Both. Good. I'm glad to see that people are looking for both. Good, 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 good. Good, because I did some training this week on the tools, and I have thoughts. Hi, Carl.
Hello.
How's it going?
Going well. How are you?
Pretty good. Pretty good.
My third Zoom meeting today.
Oh, let me tell you, me too. My third one too today.
Only my second. You win. Can I ask everybody, I'm going to say this a couple of times, can you just put your name in the chat if you haven't already, so that we can know that you're here for Flex Credit if that's what you're going for. If you're not, then that's okay. And Lynn, but a lot of people are talking about both and philosophy.
Okay, that sounds great. I'm gonna take the chat down, and I am able to share the screen, right? Because you've put me in as co-host.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Even if you weren't a even if you weren't, you could with my.
Oh, because you have yours set up that way?
Yes.
Got it. Okay, so let me move. I have to move my little bar so I can get to where I need to be. Okay. Okay. Shall we start, Janet? Are you recording? Let's record this session before we start.
Sorry about that. Yes, Lynn. Yes and yes.
Okay.
You're ready to go.
Okay, everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. The purpose of this session is to look at strategies for assessing your SLOs and creating your finals in an online environment. Typically, the way we do final exams is we have our students in our classroom, we give them the exam, we proctor, we monitor the exam, and then we collect them, we grade them, and we give them a final score. In an online environment, this looks a little different, and there are lots of new tools that Cerritos College has acquired to sort of help us do this. I have some I have some information about the tools that we are using, and I'm sorry, I'm just going to jump to this email that I got from Ian McCants in math, who uses Proctorio, because I am not familiar with Proctorio. I haven't used it, but the others and so I wanted to give you Ian's perspective on Proctorio. So we're going to go through this little presentation. The beginning of the presentation is on the tools and how the tools can be used and where you access them and that kind of thing. And then we're going to talk a little bit more about the philosophy and what you might want to think about in developing your final exams or your assessments of SLOs, especially in this environment, given the fact that all of our students have all of their finals online this year. It's different than it might be in other years. So we're going to talk about some of the tools for testing first. Those are the first part. And we have three tools. The Proctorio is a standalone tool that includes a lockdown of outside browser windows, and it also has a camera access that will allow you to determine your student is taking the exam and that your student's environment is clear of any potential, what do they call them? I don't know, things that might cause them to cheat. So Proctorio works within Canvas. It is flexible within your course. It requires it requires a webcam, and it flags suspicious activity. That's why you would use a environment check in order to look for suspicious activity. Proctorio is a add-on in Canvas that you add to your navigation bar. I'm going to show you how to do that closer to the end of the presentation, but I wanted to just give you the difference between the Proctorio and Lockdown Browser with the Respondus, so that you can see the difference, because they both basically do the same thing, but their interfaces are slightly different. Okay. So Proctorio works within Canvas. The student accesses it automatically in Canvas. It automatically starts when you start your quiz. Lockdown Browser is different. You have to download from a very specific link that has been given to our institution. You have to give that link to your students, and your students will use that to add Lockdown Browser to their computer. And that works with a Mac and Windows-enabled computer or an iPad. It doesn't work with Chrome, and it doesn't work with phones. So that's a bit of a disadvantage.
Does
Yeah.
Proctorio work with a Chromebook?
It works in Canvas. So yes, as far as I know, it does, because it is within Canvas.
Thank you.
But that's a question that I don't know, because I didn't do the tutorial on Proctorio, but I will find it out. And I'll tell you how it is that Ian uses it. But I'm presuming that, yes, you can use it with a Chromebook. The thing that worries me a little bit about this is that if this doesn't work with Chrome, and we've been giving out Chromebooks to our students to help them do their online classes, I'm not sure that this is the right tool.
The
Respondus
Lockdown Browser specifically does not work on Chromebooks.
That is correct. Yeah. Respondus is a companion to Lockdown Browser. It requires a webcam, and it requires an environment check before they can take the quiz. It flags movement and suspicious activity. So if we think about it, we go back. These are the three tools that we have. Proctorio works within Canvas, and it requires a medcam, flags suspicious activity, does all that. Lockdown Browser and Respondus work together. They also then, once the student downloads them to their computer, then they just take the quiz like normal in Canvas, but it connects, and it will lock down their browser and will flag suspicious activity.
Yes, but we're giving students Chromebooks.
I know. That's
And
why we're going to
so-
talk about alternatives to this, because what I found out in my webinar that I did on both of these tools yesterday is a variety of things. And most of the things that I learned about these tools is that they are not necessarily going to stop students from cheating, but they are useful for you in a way to help you to determine that the person who's actually taking the exam is the person that's enrolled in your class. This is what Ian said in the, well, let me go back from here, and I'm going to stop sharing the screen really quickly so we can go back to this, just to have a quick conversation really quickly, and then I'll go back to my presentation in a second. But Ian said that he hasn't found, and he's a math instructor, just so everybody knows. He's been using Proctorio all semester. He said that he asked his students, or told his students, that Proctorio was going to be used in order to proctor exams online. Students knew this in advance because it was in the syllabus. For those of us who are getting ready to do finals now, without having had told our students this in advance, it seems to me to put them at a tremendous unfair advantage, to ask them to install software, to work within these parameters, because it feels like it is going to be a huge challenge for them. However, it may be required. There are various disciplines where it is required that a student actually have a lockdown environment and that they have practice doing that type of testing, because that's the type of testing they're going to have to do. I think nursing is one of those fields, and there may be other fields like that where that is the case. But Ian did say, and I'll read you his quote, "I haven't found anything that would prevent cheating. The only suggestion I have is to make problems and questions that require thought. For math, that means more word problems. The nice thing about Proctorio is that I can verify my students are the ones taking their own exams. I place a statement in the syllabus for the requirements of the class. I still have students who complain that Proctorio is not working for them. What I really think is happening is that they're not computer savvy, and they're just not familiar, and there's been no real setup for this, which is what is needed for online courses. I think that that's the problem we're going to run into." He says, "I'm not worried about cheating. It's impossible to prevent it. I'm worried about another student taking a course for someone else. And Proctorio is good for verifying that the student taking the test is the one on your roster." So that's something to consider when using these tools. But coming up with alternatives for testing may be, in this particular semester, a better way to go. So before I get back to my presentation, actually, let me go back to the presentation. Okay, so here's some alternatives to testing. Canvas has a very rich rubric and outcomes section where you can create a detailed rubric that gets attached to your assignments. Once you have created the rubric and attached it to your assignment, the student knows exactly what the requirements are for that particular assignment. And then if you include the rubric in assignment and you use it for grading, it'll show up in the speed grader, and you can put comments directly in the speed grader on this rubric, which will allow your students to know where it is that they need to improve. So rubrics are my go-to. These are the ones I use. Another option is to ask your students to reflect their understanding of the material. So my discipline is writing, so every student is writing something different, particularly because I ask them to do an assignment where everybody has their own topic. But if all of your students are reflecting back to you the same information, you're assessing the same information from all of your students, assessing their understanding in their own words by having them write a self-reflection is a great way to determine what they know. And this allows for some student agency in their assessment, where they are able to explain in their words what it is that they understand. And if they are hitting the key terminology and the key aspects of your outcomes, it seems to me that that would show that there has been significant learning. You don't necessarily have to use a student reflection, but it could inform the way that you understand their responses or use their responses in connection with how.
Lynn, you've frozen just for a moment. Hopefully you'll stop in just a moment. While Lynn is
How you score them in the rubric. Now you're frozen, Janet.
Oh, okay.
Am I?
You're back.
How about now?
You're good.
Okay. I was talking about student reflections. Did you hear all that?
Yes.
I said you may or may not use it in your grading. It's up to you. I do have my students do a self-reflection where they score themselves based on the rubric, and 99% of the time they score themselves lower than what I would score them.
And Lynn, one of the things I wanted to add about that, because I really like that particular strategy, is that not only are students scoring themselves, but they're having to find places in their papers that support their reasoning. So let's say
Right.
that they purchased a paper from someone else, they would still have to then go back and support their grade. And if you see there's a real huge disconnect in the writing, then it might be a time to do a one-on-one Zoom session to discuss their reflection, not to accuse them of cheating, but to discuss their reflection so that you can go, there's a disconnect here. This writing doesn't sound like you, or, you know, that sort of thing, to just, you know, find out, can you talk to me a little bit more about your writing and what you were thinking about here?
Or conversely, if they are able to take the purchased research paper and reflect why it is that they get the score they get by going through it and proving it,
Right,
does that fit the outcome?
right.
Just kidding. Kidding. As a joke.
Do purchase papers manage to avoid being flagged on Turnitin?
Oh no, they're flagged on Turnitin for sure. Because it depends. If it's a unique, brand new paper that no one has ever submitted to Turnitin, probably not. But if everything that gets submitted through Turnitin, in fact, even if students turn it in to turn it in before, if it's their own work, it's going to flag it. So yeah, anything that is turned in to turnitin.com, it'll show in the originality report. Okay. You could use a student portfolio. This allows for students there's two ways to use a portfolio. You can show them, they can showcase their best work, which means that they can go back to the beginning of the semester and pick those pieces. Say you want to have 10 pieces in their portfolio, or for each of the units that you taught, you want them to show their best piece, that you can pick that. That shows that they understand what the outcomes are for each of those areas. Or you can have them show progress from beginning to end. That's one thing that I like to do in a student portfolio, is have them show me where they were in the beginning with a piece of work and where they were at the end. And then to do some sort of analysis of how their learning occurred from the beginning to the end. Again, this gives the student a bit more agency and sense of connection to their overall score. It's not something that you are giving them, it's something they are earning and understand that they're earning. A multimodal presentation is another way to assess a student's learning. They could do a video or a blog post, a gliding web post via Adobe Spark page, which I think is really cool. I've been seeing a lot of these lately, or a PowerPoint presentation. Any way that they can reflect to you a way that they have met your outcomes, that's what you want to assess. Consider a redesign of your final. This graphic I found by Julia Forsyth. Julia. Do you know her?
No, it's just Italian. Julia is the Italian way of spelling it.
Julia. Julia has these amazing little graphics that she makes. Let me show you. And she posts them on Twitter. This is really something for you to really consider as you're doing this. Let's go through it. So you need to put an exam online. Have you achieved your learning outcomes without the exam? Yes or no? If you haven't, consider reweighing the exam. And then consider a redesign of the alternatives. Can you redesign your final exam to meet the learning outcomes in an alternative format? If the answer is yes, think about the ways you can do that. Now, these are some of the ways we just described: student video presentations, reflection papers, or some sort of culminating written work. If no, you have to keep your exam. Ask yourself, are you sure? High stakes online testing is challenging to do correct to do, I don't know what that says there. Correcting the integrity of the process is very difficult to ensure. So if that's the case, if you know that your students are going to be struggling in this high stakes online testing environment, perhaps consider alternative testing. But if not, if you still need to keep your exam digitized, separate the pieces of your exam into different formats. Multiple choice, short answer, and essays in the learning management system will help you to look at some qualitative and some quantitative types of assessment so that you can not necessarily be weighting your student on a completely objective test.
Lynn, I wanted to say something as well that
Please do, Janet, anytime.
no, just about that particular I want to reemphasize that quizzes on Canvas are your exams. Okay, so it's called quizzes, but it can be used for exams. One of the things that I have done a number of different times is that it's going to be a really long exam, so I make it several quizzes instead of just one. So they can do one right after the other if they want, or they can do just one at a time and then take a break. And then that way, the students aren't necessarily struggling to just get done and having a huge anxiety attack and perhaps cheating.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that I would like to share about that is that when students are doing like short answer or essay questions online, I have them keep another tab open to Google Docs so that if for some reason, I have them do their writing on there and then copy and paste it into the quiz. So if for some reason the quiz shuts on them, they can turn in that work to me, and I make it very clear that they need to turn it in at the same time. So if they just finished the exam, they need to turn it into me, and I need to be able to verify that the timing is the same. And so that's something that I do.
Yep. Okay. I want to encourage you to take a look at the assessment module in the remote teaching resources site. Right now it's called Proctorio and Lockdown Browser Respondus, but we're going to be adding to it after this session, after we get some of the feedback from all of you all, where I will put in that graphic and some of this other information so that we can determine a little bit more about redesign. And then you can always contact Janet or me for some more information. So I'm gonna stop the share now. And Janet, do you want to share setting up a quiz? Or
you can go ahead and do that, unless you can go ahead and do
that's
that.
fine.
Before I do it.
I'm happy to do it. Okay, so let's go back then into the screen share, and we'll go into Canvas to take a look at what it looks like to do these kinds of assessments.
And while Lynn is getting that set up, if you please have not done it yet, please put your name into the chat so I can verify that you are here if you are indeed trying to get some flex credit.
I am going to look at one of my previous classes, spring of 2019. Because I did use quizzes in spring of 2019, but I'm concerned because it's not private. The students' names may be there. Maybe we'll just look at the quiz. We won't look at the student responses. I'll show you how to do that, but I won't show them. Okay, so quizzes is where you do all of your assessments. Oh, shoot, I only have one quiz in here. This is not one where I did the quizzes online. How many of you have used quizzes in Canvas before? Okay, is that a lot, Janet?
I cannot tell. I'm only seeing your face, so
Okay.
I'm looking at everybody's faces. So maybe you can change it to gallery view. And I'd be happy to go through one of my quizzes and actually critique it, because I haven't written quizzes in quite a long time. I've written some here and there. I've used old.
Well, I just want to show you a little bit about how you can do it.
Okay.
So you create your quiz by going to Canvas, and you go to quizzes, and you can either, you just click make a new quiz, right? So in making your new quiz, you need to give it a name and give it a description. The name goes here, the description goes here, and then you develop the questions. You can do questions in groups, you can do questions one at a time, and for each one of the questions, you get an option. It can be any of these kinds of questions: multiple choice, true, false, fill in the blank, etc. Keep in mind,
Fill in the blank. No.
if you, what?
Yeah, I was going to say fill in the blank is not a good idea unless.
I was just gonna say, if you use fill in the blank, it's terribly fallible, because if they don't write it exactly the way that you wrote the answer, it's gonna mark them wrong. And it's very discouraging for them. Better is short answer. So true, false, multiple choice, and I like essay question, where they can just, you can do it like a fill in the blank, but they can type it there, and then you would individually determine whether or not they actually fulfilled the answer to the question. Because like I said, fill in the blank is, you know, go ahead, Chase.
So since I teach anatomy, we use fill in the blank. And it's true that if the answer is oracle, but they put the oracle, then it's going to mark them wrong. However, I always go back and use SpeedGrader, and I correct all of those things. So
Right.
It's
Yeah,
you're
absolutely. As long as you
not-
let your, go ahead.
You're not stuck with what the system grades. You can go back and give them back a point if it's correct.
Yes, you can always go back and change it in the SpeedGrader, but if it is automatically grading your quiz and they see that they got it wrong and they know they got it right, it's going to cause them a lot of frustration and anxiety. So better to give them an option, if you're going to grade it anyway later on, to make sure that it's correct. Using the essay question, I think, might be a better way to go. But, you know, by all means, you're going to, you know, do it the way that works best.
And you
for
can also do video quizzes. So meaning that you can have a little video question for each of your quiz questions, which is wonderful,
Right.
especially for those who are doing language. Or maybe even if, let's say you have an essay quiz, one of the things I've been meaning to do is to go back and record myself reading the prompt, because a lot of times just hearing the prompt helps students out tremendously, because that's what I would do in class, is I would read it aloud to them so that it gives them multiple ways of hearing and reading.
So yeah, you guys can see how that works. If I click webcam, it's not going to work because my webcam is on Zoom right now. It's going to show that there is no video. But you can see that it's recording my voice, so you can record right here. It's simple. Once you get to the rich content editor, you click on media, and you can either record it or you can upload it. So if you have a, you can upload it, and you can create it in Canvas Studio, which is my favorite thing in the world. Canvas Studio, which is over here on this bar, allows you to record a video, voiceover video, or with or without your camera. You can add media from your computer. You can see I've got 3 right here. These are all videos that my students can use. And they are available across the platform, which means you can use them in any one of your courses. So if you develop your videos in Canvas Studio, you've got a bank of them here, and then you can just add them to your quizzes and exams.
Hi, Lynn.
Okay.
This is Rena. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can
Yes.
hear you, Rena.
Oh, hi. That's wonderful to know, the studio. Is there time limit in how many minutes our recording has to be limited to?
Not that I know of. I don't think so.
Wow.
And
That's
in
great.
the remote teaching resources, in one of the modules, there is a tutorial about how to use Studio that Angela Hopnagau created
Okay.
for all of us here
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Where will I find that?
in
I'll
remote
show you.
resources. Yes.
If you go to the remote teaching resources site and you click on the modules, this is where all your resources are for most of the things that we've been covering in the Pro Tips webinars. Is that in Pro Tips?
It might.
Actually, I think it is.
Yeah, I thought I put it in 2 places.
If you click on Pro Tips, this will take you to links for everything that we have been covering. Let's see if it's here. That's Pronto.
I'm going to have to double check because I thought it was in modules under equity. So,
Okay.
but we'll have to find it. And we'll send it
Equity
out.
is the first one.
Yes.
Seems odd that it would be there.
Okay. All right. Maybe if we scroll down, and it also may be in tools. We can keep going down.
Oh
Can't-
yeah, here it
that's
is.
Tools. There we go.
It's probably here. Studio.
Yep.
Yeah, this is Canvas Studio. And in here, it's a video on how to use Canvas Studio to create and upload and caption videos. This one's,
Thank you.
this one's by Kimberly.
Yes, but there's another one. I'm going to go
Yeah.
back and double check that a little bit later. Lynn.
We should make that navigation real clear. It seems odd that we don't even know where it is, right?
Well, it was in one place and then it looks like it got moved. So
Yeah. Well, okay. So let me just point out how you would do, I'm just going to go to my current course. Actually, go back to my summer course, which isn't published yet, any of those. Let's try here. Okay. So this is just a page that or a course shell that I use for various things. But I want to point out that Lockdown Browser is right here in your navigation bar. When you click on it, it is going to take you to the information where you have to authorize, and then you get the, you can go through any of these ideas. Basically what you need to do is go through the getting started, and it takes you through exactly how it is that you add Lockdown Browser to your computer. If you are adding Proctorio, you go to your settings and then you go to navigation, and you don't think it's in here. I think you have to search for it in apps. I forget where it is.
Oh, for Proctorio, you have to email Dave Gunn,
done.
and he will add. You have to tell him the ticket number,
Ah,
your course ticket number,
okay.
and he will add
So
it in.
he'll add it, and then you put it into your navigation.
Correct.
So he'll move it, and then you need to move it up to your navigation.
So Rena, I have a question for you about Proctorio. Have you used it?
Oh yeah, I use it weekly with my students. It worked very well.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. I don't know if you went to any of the tutorials on Respondus or not. Is there a reason why you would use Respondus instead of Proctorio? And can you tell us about how easy or difficult Proctorio is, since you are using it and Lynn and I do not?
Hi. I just jumped into Proctorio. So I think I attended a webinar and I thought, wow, this is important for my course because I teach organic chemistry. And so I don't have that many questions in the test bank. And like for general chemistry, the other professors, they can change the numbers for their calculations. So maybe it's easier, but for me, I really need to keep students accountable. And so I just started with Proctorio, and the tech support is very responsive. So at the beginning, there's some bumps, but whenever I needed help, they were there right away. And so it just took me like 1 week to get used to it. And so before I really started to use it with my students, I made a practice quiz for 0 point. Just my students can play with it. And I think only like 1 or 2 students had the trouble. So they emailed me and I connect them with support. They figure it out. And from then on, I started the weekly quizzes.
I really like that you say that, Rena, the idea of giving students a practice quiz. So if you're going to have them do something, whatever that something is, and it's high stakes and it's right and wrong, giving them a practice run I think is really important, because
it is very important.
We
Yeah.
want to make sure it's equitable.
Right.
Those barriers.
I'm using a publisher site for the test bank. So the questions are scrambled, and also there's a pool that so different students get a different sets of the tests for the same chapter. So I just went back to chapter 1. So that's the very beginning of the semester. I made 5 questions and then did the practice quiz. So they have to start it on Canvas and open up the quiz, and then the Proctorio will be activated right away. And they need to open up another tab to go to the publisher site and take those 5 question practice test. And so they give it a try, and many of them just tried for a few minutes. They got the feel of it and they log out. And so then the next 2 days, on the third day, I gave them the real quiz. Everybody did it perfectly. And just so you know, I was surprised to see half of my students were taking the test in the garage. And so that really changed how I understand how difficult the situation to them. Because Proctorio require a private room, and many of them didn't have a individual room. But and one student were taking the test on the laundry. And so when I saw that, it just, you know, it's, so I think it helps me to understand more about them.
Rena, do you know if any of your students were using Chromebooks?
I do not know. The reason I start using it because one time I had a Zoom meeting with them. So I did what is it called? A survey. A survey. So I asked them whether you have a computer or laptop with webcam and a microphone. And the response was 100%.
Right.
And then I decided to use Proctorio.
But
if there are a couple of students who do not have the equipment, you can authorize them to skip Proctorio. So the Proctorio allows you to excuse the students or give the DSPS students extra time. So it's very flexible.
And when you develop your quizzes in Canvas too, you can also determine extra time for your DSPS students or any student that needs extra time. You can set up those assessments for students to have more than one attempt. You can you know, make an end time when the quiz is going to close. You can make a total amount of time of how long you think it should take the student to do the quiz. So you get to make those determinations. And I would encourage you to pad in a bunch of extra time because technology makes everything more complicated. So just something to think about. And you know, the recall may not be as fast.
And Chase, I think what Lynn had said, and Lynn, you can correct me if I'm wrong, because I want to make sure that there's a connect here, is that you can use Proctorio with Chrome. It's Respondus Lockdown that you cannot use. Is that correct?
Yeah, the way I understand it, Proctorio works within Canvas, and Lockdown Respondus is its own EXE. It's its own program that gets embedded on your computer, and it doesn't work with Chrome or a phone. It only works with iPad.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, so as far as I understand, I think it works with within Canvas with any computer.
Right.
I don't know if it works with a mobile though. I don't know how many of our students are using their phones at this time to actually do their work.
And see, the idea of doing a poll, I think, is really important. And then also,
Very good idea.
you know, polling ahead of time if you're not sure. And then if you're going to do some sort of exam using Proctorio and it's like a high stakes exam and you haven't done it before, it should not be the last day of the semester.
And you should definitely do that practice.
Right. Right.
Both platforms recommend that you give your students the practice quiz first.
And there's a
The
webinar video with it that
The Proctorio website says that it works with Mac, PC, Chromebook, or an external webcam and microphone, but not with either smartphones or tablets.
Okay.
thank you, Teresa.
That's good to know. If you have a student who does not have a device and is doing your course on their phone, you may have to come up with an alternative assessment for them. It's just something to think about. I know there are several students who are doing that right now. I mean, I would hope they would have come and gotten the computer from the school. I don't know, we're still giving them out. I think we were, but I don't know how many students got them and how many didn't. When I did survey my students, they all had access to computers, 100%. So, but we don't know. We don't know. So we cannot, one of the things that we need to remember in terms of equity is that we can't require that every student do the same thing without knowing whether or not every student has the access. Accessibility is key in that respect.
Especially when it's remote, especially when this was not what they signed up for.
That's
if they signed up for it, it would be a little bit different as long as they knew ahead of time.
Right. So I talked to my dean, Andrew, regarding the fall semester, and so he just suggests us to add that notes. So students, when they sign up, when they enroll in classes, they know they will be required to use Proctorio to take tests.
Yeah, and you can put that in the notes section of the course schedule.
Right.
So the schedule of classes, you can add notes directly to the schedule of classes. So particularly for fall, work with your department secretary. If you want to make sure that that is a requirement that students have, make sure it's in the schedule of classes so that when they sign up, they know that because it's right there. So they can add that so that when students go to sign up for your class, they know. And then make sure it's in your syllabus and connect them with as many, all the tutorials that they're going to need in order to do it, including your practice test, I think is also useful.
Excuse me, Lynn and Janet.
Sorry, I came late. I just want to share my experience because some of my students have the computer, some don't. So what I end up is I'm using both Proctorio as well as a lockdown browser, because the lockdown browser, there's an option you do not need it to have a webcam. And it can also be used on the iPad. So what I have done is I set up 2 forms of the exam. One use Proctorio, one will use a lockdown. I let them choose whichever whatever equipment they have. Option to have, it's called the responders, it's a camera, but the lockdown does not. So, which is,
that's right.
It's not the best ideal one. I like to use Proctorio, but if they don't have one, I can't do anything about it. So
you froze
I just let them choose.
You froze up for a moment, so I just wanted to ask a clarifying question. So if you set it up with both, then students just choose one when they go in and then they don't have to use the other. You can do that easily enough then?
Yes, I just told them they choose one of the options that works for them. So so that on my gradebook, I have both columns, but I have to manually do the ones later.
Right, and so that I'm glad you brought that up, because if you leave, like, let's say there's 2 assignments and they're choosing one or the other, and you do not put a 0 in, that does not go against them as long as it's just the dash dash, or you can also go in and put excused very easily enough if you go next to the assignment and hit the little dots, and then you can choose excused. Okay, so that was good. That's what I needed to know. I didn't know if you could do it like one quiz, you could choose it. You're setting up 2 quizzes to be able to meet the needs.
Right.
Of the students. Okay.
Right. Yeah. So the student then makes the choice, which I think is exactly the right kind of thing.
Right.
That's what
Very
makes it
clever.
fair.
I
Yeah,
have a
Rena.
question. Yeah. For Canvas Studio, how can I sign up to the remote teaching resources site?
Oh, we can add you. Are
Yeah.
Oh,
you
you
not
can add
on
me.
it?
Yeah, just
No,
email
I don't see it.
Lynn or me, and
Okay.
we'll add you ASAP. We
Oh,
invited
good.
people, yeah, but we invited people right at the beginning, but people like fell through the cracks, and so this is, sorry about that, Rena.
Oh, no. I'm so glad to know about the so many resources. So for Canvas Studio, right now I only need to capture the screen when I record for my students. I'm using Screencast, but there's a 15-minute time limit. But as you said, you were not aware there's time limit, which is really good.
I don't think there is.
But what about editing? Does the Canvas Studio has an editing feature, at least allowing me to cut off the ending
Yeah.
or the beginning? Is it possible?
Yes.
And
Oh,
you know what, you
wow.
can actually do a Zoom. I like to do Zoom meetings when I'm, because I want to have access to share my screen. So a lot of times I create my videos using a Zoom meeting. I download it, I trim it, I upload it to YouTube, and we're ready to go. So I've
Right.
done that quite a bit as well.
Yeah.
But you
that
can also do
doesn't-
that in Canvas Studio. If you if you want your face in your screen capture in a little box, Zoom allows you to do that, and Screencast
Right.
allows you to do that as well.
Okay.
But Canvas Studio, you'll just do a screen capture. It won't have your webcam. It won't show your face.
So what kind
but
of
you can
edit
edit.
it allows us to do after the
I'm not
recording?
exactly sure. I would have to look at it, but I know that you can cut off the front and the back. I'm not sure
Okay.
if you can trim in the center, but I know you can
Yeah.
do that in there's a million different video editing tools for free available.
Yeah, I use the Movie Maker. I find
Yeah.
myself a producer now.
You know what?
Oh yeah.
But
We are all multimedia experts these
Yeah.
days.
Let me tell you one that I'm liking a whole lot that our colleague Terry Cheatham brought up, and I'm creating a video for my daughter's 14th birthday. It's a 15-minute long video. It's most teaching videos are like 2 to 3 minutes tops, but this is a long one with all these different messages from people, and it's on clips. So if you have the iPhone, an iPhone or an iPad, it's free, and you can create the clips right on the app, or you can just do it right on your phone and then upload it, and you can trim it very easily, which I've been doing, and it's been
It
fantastic.
doesn't allow you to put in clips that you already created on your phone. You can't caption those.
You can't okay. Well,
Yeah, you can only caption ones that you make in clips.
But yes, so you can still do that though. You can still videotape it. And
Yeah.
Okay. Great.
Yeah, but there's a million of these kind of video resources also on that remote teaching site. This session is about finals,
Go
so I
ahead.
want to just get us focused back on that
Sure.
really quickly before we end. In terms of finals, think about what your learning outcomes are, and think about multiple ways to assess your SLOs beyond the final exam. The final exam, you can determine how valuable it is to weight it, how you're going to weight it based on the fact that for many of us, for most of us, our students went online midterm and they didn't they didn't sign up for that. Some of you maybe are teaching a second 9-week class where students started online and they didn't sign up for that. And for some of us, it's mine was already online hybrid, so my students were a bit prepared, but they're still struggling. Everybody is kind of struggling with the remote component, and for many students, they will have never taken an exam online like this. So anything you can do to provide detailed instructions with screen captures of what it is they're going to see when they take your exam, that will be helpful. And Janet, do you have any other tips for?
I have a couple of them. Like I said, I really think waiting till the last day to give the final, like where you're going to upload grades right that day, is not exactly equitable, especially if there's a problem. So you may want to tell students, okay, there's going to be a window between, you know, this day and this day, but still, even though you're telling them the window has closed, you're allowing yourself a little bit of extra time, just in case there's a problem and you need to give them a little bit of extra time. And I always am an advocate of backwards planning. So if you already know what your final exam is going to be, I would recommend that you go look at it and look at what you've been teaching them and making sure that you're hitting every single thing that they're supposed to know. And if not, that's where you need to go in and have the instruction before they complete that final exam. But that extra time, students, you know, think that they're going to be able to do everything just fine. And I think we all do. We all, you know, may wait till that last minute, but I think if you build in that secret extra time, just in case, I think is really important.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, anybody else have any other last minute tips? If you can leave your exam open for a reasonable amount of time in a writing class, that for us, that's 24 hours. I leave my final essay exam open for 24 hours. And then if they don't make it and they email me and they want to submit something, I'll still take it. But you know, you can make that decision. Whitney, did you have
Yes. I was wondering how best to make that work with like my final schedule to be on a Thursday, 12 to 2 p.m. I know there's kind of no right way to do it, but is there a wrong way so I can make sure not to do it the wrong way, like leaving my Canvas quiz open as their final exam for 24 hours instead of the 2 hours that it would be in person? And so, like, instead of saying it's only going to be on Canvas for 2 hours, like it would have been in person, saying it'll be on Canvas for 24 hours. Is that okay, knowing that it's not scheduled until the Thursday of finals week and they'd be finished with it by Friday?
I think that's really important. I will tell you, I was in the drive-through at Starbucks and somebody was telling me about how they're taking online classes, but that their coworkers are complaining because their teachers are requiring them to meet exactly at the time that their classes were supposed to meet. And what has happened is that a lot of our students, their hours have changed, or they've lost jobs and they've had to find jobs. So if you can leave it open for that 24 hours, I think it's really important. Kathy. Oh, you need to unmute yourself, Kathy, or I'll help you. Nope. Go to your picture and there we go.
I think you have to make sure that your students don't have other commitments if you are going to move your final to a different time. Even if you're leaving it open for 24 hours, if they have some other obligation, you may not be able to change the time or day without having a consensus from your students.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
Yeah.
And so what you're saying, Kathy, is if Whitney changed her final to Tuesday and it's in the schedule for Thursday, even though she leaves it open from Tuesday to Wednesday, that may be difficult for her students.
Exactly.
So
Especially,
that's another reason why you might want to consider a different kind of assessment than an exam, if that's possible. You know, I feel like anything we can do to assess in a variety of ways beyond the exam, I think is a good call. But I would check with your division office too on that, on what is the equity on that, or what is the
That's what I was just wondering. I didn't want to go over any of the allotted time, but I guess there's still exams that were originally scheduled for Friday. So do we have that whole week to just play around with, this is the type of assessment I want to use?
I don't know about that.
because you know, I'm new, so I'm asking like logistical,
Yeah.
when do things need to be turned in so that I can be like cleared. I don't want to.
I'm checking right now when the semester ends. A lot of times finals week begins the Friday before and ends on Thursday. But I do think that, I'm just going to look at the academic calendar really quickly while we're all still here.
And and William does have a question. We'll get to you, William, in just a moment. But Whitney, while Lynn is looking, if you have it open, and you have it open during those 2 hours, maybe it's 12 to 2, and that 2 p.m. is the final time, the final cutoff, but you have it open beforehand for a couple of 2-3 days, and it's a 2-hour exam that you have, then that's going to be fine. And in fact, I've heard from students, I don't know how ethical this has been, but I've heard from students that some of their classes are already over, even though they're not supposed to be. Because what they've done, because it's remote, is that they've told their students, as soon as you have hit this threshold of points, you're done with the class. So yes, I know, I was shocked too. They said, what about your class? I said, oh no, that's not my class. But I'm just saying, you know, just being really as flexible as you can is critical. Lynn, go ahead.
The finals week is May 16th through the 22nd. So it's Saturday to Friday.
Thank you, because I want to make sure that I am being flexible within the time constraints of Cerritos. Because of course I'm going to be flexible more so than ever before.
That's
but still, right. When the deadlines are due, they need to be like on my
22nd. Friday is the last day of the semester.
So I like that idea, Janet, of like using the 2 p.m. that was on the schedule and going backwards from there, like 2 days prior to that. Yeah. Thank you. That cleared everything up.
William has been patiently waiting.
Oh, hi. William from accounting. So I think the discussion that's taken place has answered the question a little bit, but so we do have a little bit of leeway then in terms of the time that we could open the final. So it's not strictly, so if it's like a 12 to 2 final, it's not that it's only accessible from 12 to 2. I'm hearing that we should probably leave it open for maybe 12 hours or so, just because our students' schedules have changed. Is that?
I think so.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When I teach online, I do, you know, finals week is a lot more open than it is in a face-to-face class.
Right.
Just naturally.
Right.
Because a online class, and I'm talking online, not emergency remote like we're in now, but in a traditional online class, you need to build in the flexibility, because that's why the students take the online class. Requiring a 2-hour window, I think, would be a great disservice to our students at this time. I think you definitely need to broaden it out.
I think I'm gonna, so I have some classes that that I teach at night, and so it's a schedule. So my scheduled exam time would be from 8 to 10 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think from that one, I might take it as far as 24 hours, because you know, it's unreasonable to say that if it's 12 hours and they needed to get it done by 8 a.m. the next morning, which would mean that they'd be taking an exam.
That may be hard if they're working the night shift or overnights,
exactly.
or, you know, you don't know. I think within 24 hours, and make your exam reasonable. Do not make it something that's necessarily going to take longer than a typical exam time. You know, if you can make your exam even a little less long than you normally do, that would be better.
And again, you could do something where, and like I was saying before, you could make your final exam start the week before, where you open up a part and they do that part. And then during final exam week, maybe they finish the second part, or however many parts that you want. so
Right.
that you can support them and say, okay, this part's going to be on this, and this part's going to be on this. This is what you can expect.
Especially since they're going to have all their finals online during finals week.
Right.
Right?
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
that's
you
a
very
good
much.
call, Janet. Good ideas, everybody.
I'm okay staying for a couple of more minutes if anyone wants to kind of maybe talk out their particular scenario and
Yeah, me too.
brainstorm if you have any specific questions about your area. And as always, I want to thank not only Lynn, but the fact that we are a learning community, just like our classes are. And thank you for everybody for sharing ideas and throwing out ideas. That's how we become stronger instructors for our students.
I want to say too that I have, I think this may be the last of our weekly webinars because next week, I don't know, we may do one next week. I don't know. We don't have a topic.
We have one more. We're
Oh,
going
we do?
Yes, we have one more. And next week's webinar is going to be on closing things out.
Oh, yeah.
So finishing up the semester.
Yeah. That's a good call. So anyway, I thoroughly enjoyed this. We see a lot of the same people every week, and we think it's really been helpful. And we're going to see if we can continue something to this effect through the summer, or to help people prep for fall, depending on what happens. I don't know. We don't know. Okay.
I think Kathy wants to go ahead, Kathy. Oh, I think, let's see, you have to unmute yourself.
She was saying
Kathy.
goodbye.
Oh, she was saying goodbye. Okay. Does anybody else have any questions? Or anything to share, any strategies that you'd like to share?
People are saying they're doing 24 hours or a little more than 24 hours. That's what they're saying in the chat for the
All right.
final.
All right. Okay,
Good.
fantastic. All right, if everybody's set. Lynn, did you want to say anything else? It was great.
Thank you, everybody. It was
Thank
very
you.
good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn.
Thank
Jenny.
you.
Thank you. Take care. See you
Bye.
next week.
Bye.
Yeah, I'm